What is up, everybody? Welcome to Football Diehards. Today we're going to go through and talk about our favorite plays for Week 3 of the NFL, talk some ownership along the way, talk some strategy. I am here with Jamie. Jamie, what is up with you? Are you looking forward to this Week 3?
Absolutely. It's Eli Manning Day at Giant Stadium. I'm wearing my Eli jersey, and the Giants are fantasy viable, so this is going to be a fun one. How's your week been? You ready for this?
Yep, I'm ready. There's some injury news that we're going to talk about throughout as well, but we'll go game by game. A couple really notable ones as well, but we'll talk about those. Talk some ownership, like I said. And I guess we could start with the first game, but right off the bat, we have Chicago Bears going against the Cleveland Browns. Jamie, anything sticking out to you on this one here?
Yeah, the obvious one here is Justin Fields is getting the start. It's not the best spot on the road against that Cleveland defense, but he's so cheap at $5,200 on DraftKings, and right now it's looking like his ownership is pretty low. That's the only thing that's possibly preventing me from keeping him from my actual cash lineups this week. But he's probably going to be the one that I wind up rolling with at 5,200, just because I'm able to do so much with that. And even in a tough matchup, his rushing upside, especially in the red zone, is on another level. You know, especially over Andy Dalton. He's got a little bit more of a range of outcomes than you would like, because based on how excited we've been from him. But you know, I think at his price tag, it removes a lot of that variance for me. So I'm excited to play him this week. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll get there. I was going to ask you the same thing. Like, do you think he is cash viable? And I'm very tempted on him as well in cash because you can do a lot of things. But yeah, he's going to have that rushing yard upside. You know, not the worst matchup in the world, right? A game where they're projected to be trailing 5,200. Like, he doesn't need to do much. Maybe he does get into the end zone once or twice. That could very well be enough. I do want to hear your thoughts on this one guy. So, of course, Landry's going to be out. And, you know, Odell Beckham is going to play this week. He's going to make his very first start this week, and he's 5,300. If this was a couple years ago, right, like we'd be all over Odell Beckham Jr., 5,300. You know, the talent's there. If he is healthy, this could, you know, be a good spot for him, 5,300. I don't hate taking a couple shots on Odell. Any thoughts on Odell? Do you have any interest at all in him?
Yeah, I'm certainly no interest in the cash format, because he's way too boomer bust for this week for that. But the Bears pass defense has already given up five five touchdowns to wide receivers this week. They're definitely beatable on the back end, and with Jarvis Landry out, he's definitely elevated. I do want to kind of see if they're going to keep him on any kind of snap count in the next hour or so. But I think at 5,300 in GPPs, I'm fine with it. The only thing is I'm not really stacking this game at all,
Yeah.
so he would kind of have to be a one-off, you know. But that's fine. I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, Baker's been Baker's been actually looking good, right? He threw it like a 90% completion rate last week, 75% the week before. That's I don't know, but that's got to lead the league, right? So yeah, I don't hate it. Nothing really else sticks out for me in this game. I don't really want to get to Chubb, don't really want to get to Montgomery, to be honest. Anything else stick out to you?
No, I agree. I do think that if if you're a little more sold on Fields than everybody else is, and you do stack them, there's definitely more upside with his wide receivers than there was the previous two, especially Mooney, who is the deep threat. But I don't really have much from this game in GPP, and I'm really only considering Fields as the cash quarterback, and even that's not a lock yet because there are other options, expensive and cheap.
Jamie, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I
Okay.
can't hear him.
Hey, Jason, if you can hear us, why don't you log in and log back out? Because you
Can you
went,
hear me now?
yeah. Wow, that
Yep.
was good.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we're
That's that
back.
Vegas magic out there.
There it is. All right, Jamie, what
Yeah.
do you got
Okay.
for this one?
I didn't hear your question.
Oh, yeah, what do you got for this game? We're going to go for Washington or Buffalo, my bad.
Okay. All right. No problem. So yeah, this is the Bills are pretty exciting for this one. They have a team total of 28. Um, the over under the last I saw this morning, correct me if I'm wrong, was about 46. I think you can pound the over on that one, just based on Washington's early season defense has just not lived up to what we thought it was going to be. Um, Josh Allen is been kind of pedestrian the first two games, but this looks like a pretty good breakout spot for him and his receivers. It was Pittsburgh shut him down, and then Miami was just so uncompetitive in that game that they didn't really need to do anything against that. But Washington's defense has only gotten 5 quarterback hits so far, and they were known to be doing that pretty well. So I think you can play Josh Allen in the cash format if you want. I love an Allen Diggs stack in GPP against kind of a questionable secondary. And Washington has also struggled in the slot thus far this year. They allowed 9 catches for 100 yards to Keenan Allen, 9 catches for 94 yards to Sterling Shepard. So this is kind of a good spot for Cole Beasley as well. Where are you? Anything else for the Bills for you? And what about the Washington side?
Yeah, so Josh Allen is coming in at about 8%. Stephon Diggs is coming in at the sixth highest owned wide receiver at 13%. And yeah, I think that's an interesting point you brought up, right? Like Josh Allen, he has not looked great. 51% completion rate in week 2 against Miami, 58 against Pittsburgh. But, those are two very good defenses where Washington, we expected them to be a very good defense, but they definitely have not performed up to, the hype. So yeah, I think it could be a very interesting week to go back to this Bills offense because, like you said, they're going to break out one of these weeks. Although Josh Allen does not look good, they're playing some really solid defenses. So yeah, I like that call for sure. Yeah, for me, Josh Allen, Beasley. I'm going back to Beasley this week, 4,800. Last week they ran the ball a ton. Beasley got 4 targets, 4 receptions, only 7.6 DraftKings points. Week 1 he did have 13 targets. I do expect Beasley to hopefully get back on track here. And like you said, Diggs I think is in a phenomenal spot as well. Washington ranked 27th thus far in posing DraftKings points to wide receivers, so don't hate that. And as far as the Washington side goes, Gibson, 5,900 seems cheap. I don't know if I love the matchup. He's not been doing all that great. Only 13 carries, 69 yards last week, only 9.3 DraftKings points. 2 targets last week, 5 targets week 1. Any thoughts on Gibson? He's very cheap, but I don't know if I like the matchup here.
Yeah, I'm kind of bypassing him just based on that too, and also on the commitment that they showed to McKissick in week 2. I don't think that McKissick is going to be faded enough that he's not going to be a pain for Antonio Gibson. So Gibson, I think you need to kind of pick your spots with him in the positive game scripts where they're going to grind it out. But yeah, this doesn't look like the game for that with Washington coming in at 8-point underdogs in this game. What about McLaurin? Has he proven to be matchup proof at this point?
Yeah, I'd say so, right? I mean, if we have 14 targets last week, 4 for 4 week 1. Yeah, I'm a big McLaurin guy. Yeah, this is a game script that I don't mind him here. So if I was doing a Bill stack, I think McLaurin would be a decent run back option for sure. I'm trying to take a look at the ownership and see where McLaurin is, and I'm not quite seeing him. So he must be like really oh, there he is. So he's 3% owned. McLaurin 3%
Yeah.
owned. That's not terrible, right?
No, I think you're right. I think that's a perfect spot to take a shot back on Bill's stacks because I do think that he has proven himself to be because they use him all over the field. So even the tough corner matchups don't matter for him. So I think he's one that you can make an excuse to use any week, especially since he immediately has shown chemistry with Heineke as well. And again, like, along the lines of Allen Robinson, he looks like just a receiver that doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball because he's that good.
Yep, and he's going to get a bunch of opportunities. So, yeah, I think that's about it for this game. I say we can move on to the Colts versus the Titans. Yeah, for me, I mean, the only thing I have highlighted here is going to be the Titans defense, and they're going to be the chalk defense of the week. And, I definitely get why they're just way too cheap here at 2,400. So for me, it's the Titans. They're sitting at 10% ownership, which is tied for the first ownership. I think Henry is fine to go back to. I think Henry's fine on any given slate, but just seeing the ownership on Henry definitely does scare me away. Typically, this is where I want to fade Derrick Henry when he's going to be very high owned, coming off of a very good game last week. And I'm a big Henry guy. I think he's phenomenal. I think he can go off on any given week. But just seeing him being the second highest owned running back and being very expensive, I can definitely see myself getting elsewhere. So do you feel the same on Henry like me? Are you going to try to get away from him this week? Try to get away from the ownership, or are you going to go right back to the well with Henry after a big performance last week?
I'm going back to him, and it's more early in the week when I wrote up the cash article for Football Diehards. It was kind of Cook and Henry in their own tier up top, and just based on all the injury stuff with Dalvin Cook, which we'll get to, I've settled on Henry. His price on FanDuel is a little bit prohibitive, which is odd to say because usually that's not the site that has the prohibitive prices. But just to bring up, he's got 10 targets and 9 catches already. I don't know. I mean, based on his career, that's an outlier, but he does have a new offensive coordinator, and I don't know. I mean, that's that's something just to keep in mind on DraftKings. If he's involved in the passing game, he's going to be near the top of the plays every week. Indianapolis's run defense has let in almost 5 yards per carry so far, and the game script is positive. And especially, I'm with you on the Titans defense. They're my current cash play, so I'm going to correlate that with Henry with the game script, almost certainly in cash. But you're right, with the ownership, there's definitely paths to fading him at such a high ownership in GPP, and I think the most direct way to do that is to play the Titans passing game. A.J. Brown is too cheap, and Julio Jones is too cheap, and they're both coming in way too low owned for their talent.
Yeah, true. I mean, I think Henry's a phenomenal play, right? It's just for me when I'm building my lineups, I find myself this week more so paying up for wide receiver and paying down for running back. So Henry doesn't really fit into that build. But yeah, Henry's a good play. If you like Henry, I like that correlation, right, with the Titans defense. But yeah, you're right. AJ Brown's way too cheap, 6,500. Julio Jones 6,500 as well. I think they're in play. Anything on the Colts side stick out to you in this one?
No, no, not at all. It's supposedly Carson Wentz is starting, but he's 2 sprained ankles. I mean, who knows what that's going to do? That makes me like the Titans defense even more. They've had Brett Hundley taking like majority of the quarterback reps in practice all week, so I think that people have been saying that kind of shows a lack of confidence in Jacob Easton's ability. I think you can also say that they're not quite certain of his health. I could easily see him leaving this game, especially if the Titans get up quick. So I don't really have anybody that I'm looking at on the Colts side. They're underdogs, so you can always consider Nyheim Hines in that passing game role, but I didn't use him. So I don't have any Colts this week. Do you?
No. Yeah, 2 sprained ankles. Come on. Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's safe to move on to the next game here. And yeah, this should be an interesting game, right? You're a big Giants fan. We have the Giants going against the Falcons. First of all, do you think the Giants get the win? And second of all, who are you looking forward to playing in this game today?
Your first question, do I think they get the win? I can never confidently answer that question ever again. So I hope so. But the Falcons are desperate as well. So we'll see. I think it really depends on Saquon Barkley for this one, who I have all over the place in both formats. My biggest cash decision right now is down to Barkley versus Chris Carson, who are essentially the same price on DraftKings. I still, to this minute, have not figured out which way I'm going to go yet on that one. But just one thing on Barkley. even though he's not looked good so far. The positives to take out of it is that he is playing the bell cow role. He had an 84% snap share rate, and he ran over 70% routes on passing plays. Now he's had 10 days since their Thursday night game. So Atlanta has allowed almost 5 yards per carry so far this season as well. They've also allowed the most receptions to running backs out of the backfield over the last 3 years. So at his prices, I think you got to smash him. And then the passing game should be great. Daniel Jones is third in rushing for among quarterbacks. He's got 2 touchdowns, should have been 3 after that holding call brought one back. AJ Terrell, Atlanta's top corner, is out, which really bodes well for them out wide. Sterling Shepard has not been stopped by anybody in the slot, and Atlanta has not shown any willingness to stop anybody in the slot. They gave up touchdowns to Chris Godwin, to Devontae Smith out of the slot. So I'm kind of all in on this offense, and it's fun because I'll be glued to the game. So there's that dual watching privilege, and they might get Evan Ingram back too. I'm sure we'll see that possibly at some point in this show if they drop the inactives. But yeah, every Giant I think is in play. Jones, Shepard, and Barkley are all cash plays for me. Golladay is more the GPP play. Slayton is a deep GPP play. So I kind of dominated that team. Anything you want to add? And I'll let you take the Falcons side if you like. Giants defense hasn't looked good so far, so I'm sure you'll find something there.
Yeah, so I surprisingly have a lot of interest in this game, just like you, right? Like Barkley is coming in at the 4th highest own. I was hoping to be a little bit sneaky with him because, like you mentioned, he has not been performing all that well. But this is very well going to be his easiest matchup to date, right? And by a mile. Denver week 1, Washington, although they've not been great, still, it's going to be a lot better matchup here against Atlanta. You mentioned the 10 days rest. I think that's huge. If we get a healthy or at least semi-healthy Barkley in this game, this should be a smash spot for him at 6,500. This could be the game where he does break out, and I think you're going to want to be on him because if he does break out, I'm sure we're not going to see him at 6,500 next week, right? So yeah, I'm with you. I'm high on Barkley. I think it's a little bit of a risk, a little bit of a question mark, but I do think the upside is going to be there. You mentioned Daniel Jones. Yeah, I like Daniel Jones as well. He's 5,800. He has that rushing yard upside. Had 95 rushing yards last week and a touchdown. I like him. And then I'm with you on Shepard as well. On the flip side, on the Atlanta side, Calvin Ridley is somebody else that's going to continue to stick out to me week in and week out. He's now 7,000. He got priced down. He was week 1, he was 7,900. Week 2, he was 7,500. He is now sitting at 7,000. The targets are there. 10 targets last week, 8 targets in week 1, 19.3 DraftKings points last week. So he had a good game last week, but they did price him down about 500. I don't mind going back to Calvin Ridley, and then I'll be going back to Pitts as well. I think he's a solid run back option for sure. Again, same with him. The targets are there. 6 targets in week 2, 8 targets in week 1. That big game has not been there yet, but I could see it coming. No touchdowns yet. Maybe this could be the week, but yeah, this is a game that I do have some serious interest in. But out of the whole game, I think Barkley is going to be the guy where the majority of my personal ownership does go to. I think we covered pretty much anything. Anything else on the Atlanta side sticking out to you?
You cut out for a second for me again. Did you talk about Kyle Pitts at all?
Yes.
Okay, then no. No, I think we're good. Yes, as long as if you're stacking Giants, I think coming back with Ridley or Pitts is the way to go. Mike Davis is an interesting one too. I mean, Cordarrelle Patterson's kind of emerged on the scene there, but he's still running a third of the snaps that Mike Davis is, and Davis has been involved in the passing game too. And the Giants have allowed over 5 yards per carry so far, and also 11 catches out of the backfield so far. So I do like Mike Davis in, I would say, any format. I'm not using him in cash. He's coming in at about 5% ownership on DraftKings. So I think he's another option as a bring back if you're stacking Giants.
Yep, for sure. Calvin Ridley is sitting at 6% ownership. That's pretty low, right? I mean, he has some serious upside. So don't hate that. Anything else they got to the game, or do you think we can move on?
No, I think you can stack them either way in games and be getting some upside out of that as well.
Sounds good. So I can't wait to talk about this game. We have the Chargers going against the Chiefs. Should be an exciting game, as are most Chiefs games. Yeah, how are you going to attack this game?
Yeah, the over under. Joey Bosa is doubtful, and Chris Harris is out, and as a result, the already highest over under of this game at 55.5. Last I saw is rising, so
Hmm.
you have to attack this game. There's just so many points in this one too. So first things first. I do like the Chargers side a little bit better than the Chiefs side if you're stacking. Even though they have the lower team total than the Chiefs, the game script dictates that they're going to throw a lot. Justin Herbert has averaged over 300 yards per game in both meetings against the Chiefs last year, which is natural because when you're playing against Kansas City, you just have more passing plays. Um, he threw for 4 touchdowns and only threw one pick, 9.6 yards per attempt. So in GPP, I think stacking Herbert with any combination of Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jared Cook, and even Austin Eckler, who had his 9 catches last week, this game sets up perfectly for his skill set. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them in GPP. I think if you're spending up at quarterback, either quarterback is fine in cash. I don't think you need to, but I wouldn't argue it either way in this game. So I do have one Chief that I want to get your opinion on, but I'll let you take the lead on the Chiefs here first and see where you're sitting, and then follow it up.
Yeah, on the Chiefs, I'm more so on the Chargers side personally. Like you said, I think stacking them up is the way to go this week. Very high on Herbert, and something to note about Herbert is he's been looking really good, right? 338 yards week 2 against Dallas, and then 337 yards in week 1 against Washington. And something that stuck out to me is 1 touchdown last week, 1 touchdown in week 1, only 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. You got to expect that it's going to go up, and you got to expect it's going to go up in a game like this where, like you said, it's a 55.5 point total. So yeah, I'm all over Herbert this week. I think this is a great time to bounce on him in this Chiefs game. And then I like stacking him up with, I think, Eckler is a good stacking option, had 9 targets, 9 receptions last week. And then Keenan Allen is somebody that's always very reliable, somebody that I do like in cash, averaging 19.9 DraftKings points, 22 targets on the year. So Keenan Allen and Herbert is what I'm looking at. And on the Charger side, on the Chiefs side, I think Tyreek Hill could be interesting depending on the ownership, which I'm checking now. Yeah, not as low as I'd like to see. 15.606%. I was kind of hoping after a kind of a poor game last week, only 5.9 DraftKings points, that people would kind of be off of him. That does not seem to be the case, but still, I mean, Tyreek Hill is going to be going to bounce back this week. It's going to be a shootout, a high scoring game. I think Tyreek Hill is somebody to look at. Don't love the ownership. I was hoping for lower ownership, but it's hard to deny that he's not in play. And then Travis Kelsey is somebody that I actually made a priority to go up and get in my lineups this week, and I do like that. 8,200 in a very high-scoring game. Travis Kelsey is the man, averaging 26.3 DraftKings points, 26 last week, 25.6 week 1. I like him here once again. 8,200. He is expensive, but I think he's well worth it. They're using him a lot, right? 15, 16 targets in 2 weeks. He's looking phenomenal, and they're going to get him the ball. And in a high-scoring game, I think he has some touchdown opportunities. So for me, on the Chiefs side, I'm looking at Tyreek Hill. I'm looking at Travis Kelsey. Usually been paying down for tight end, but yeah, Travis Kelsey's in a couple of my lineups this week. And then, this is the guy I think you might be talking about, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is 4,800. So I'll let you talk about him.
Yeah, so that was the one I wanted to get. You set me up perfectly here. So he's currently in my cash, and which is, I mean, if you're on Twitter last week, we're ready to basically burn him down and call him like a first round bust, shouldn't be on the field, etc. So he's come all the way down to $4,800. So here's what I want to bring up about him. He's still the guy in that offense from the backfield. I know it's a predominantly passing first offense, so any running back in that offense is going to come with question marks and a little bit wider a range of outcomes. Had that game-costing fumble against Baltimore. But he's looked slow also. but he's still in the best offense on the slate. I mentioned Joey Bosa's out, Chris Harris is out. Kenneth Murray is also doubtful for this game. That can really be kind of the key factor if I'm going to keep him in the cash, if he plays or not. If he doesn't play, Chargers have already allowed 5.5 yards per carry and 2 rushing touchdowns through the first couple of weeks, and he's basically free for a running back. I mean, he's priced in the range of, who did I write down? It was Jeremy McNichols is also $4,800. What was the other one? Devin Singletary is more expensive than him. Michael Carter, Devontae Booker is $200 less than him. He won't even see the ball. It's going to be all Barkley. Like the range he's priced in is just too cheap for me to ignore. So it's highly likely I'm leaving him in my cash lineup. Definitely fading him at GPP because it looks like others are doing the same thing. But where are you on him this week?
Yeah, I mean, as ugly as it is, I'm with you. I'm going back to him as well. 4,800, right? Like he's so cheap, like you said, basically free. And he actually, he should have had a touchdown last week. He got vultured by Williams, but yeah, the opportunity is there for him. This is a matchup where it's a good game script. They're favored. It's a 55.5 point total. So if he falls in the end zone once, like that's all you need, right? Just get into the end zone one time, and I'll be extremely happy at 4,800. And that's kind of what I'm shooting for here. It allows you to do other things in your lineup. Very cheap. I don't hate it. The ownership, the ownership is a little bit concerning. It's sitting at 13%, which is going to make him about the 4th or 5th highest owned running back on the slate. Doesn't feel great, but again, if he can just get into the end zone one time, that should be enough at 4,800. And like you mentioned, the Chargers' run defense is not great. Injuries on the Chargers side as well. So yeah, everything's lining up for Edwards-Helaire to be a solid player. It's just he has not looked good at all. So we'll see. Hopefully he gets a touchdown, but don't want to give my expectations too high on him.
Yep. I'm just trying to think if there was anything else in this thing. I think we covered it. I mean, there's so much to unpack from this game. I do, just as a final bow on it, I will say, if you're playing cash, you have to have a piece of this game somewhere. It's just too much in its own tier as far as that team total and expected pace of play goes. Even if that piece is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you need to have some form of this game in cash, I think. And if you're stacking it, like go nuts, full stack. Two receivers, 2 bringbacks is fine, I think, in this kind of thing.
Yep, for sure. I agree. I'm very high on the Chargers side this week, so hopefully Herbert can get more than 1 touchdown. I think he could this week. This is a week to do it. All right, so we'll move on to the next game here, and we have the Steelers going against the Bengals. I guess one thing I'll start out with is Johnson is going to be out, so that does give me a lot of interest in Claypool. I think that bumps in Juju Smith-Schuster as well. So I'm going to be very high on Claypool, especially 5,800. I love the price tag here. I think he has an opportunity to go off. We remember what he did last year when Johnson was out. He had some games where he absolutely went off. So on the Pittsburgh side, I am looking at Claypool. I think Juju's in play as well, 100%. Harris is somebody that I think we could go back to. He did well last week, 6,600, had 19.1 DraftKings points, had a receiving touchdown. Pretty cheap. I mean, the productivity has not really been there, only averaging 3.8 yards per carry in week 2, only 2.8 in week 1, but they are involving him in the pass game, five targets last week, 5 receptions. I think Harris is solid to go back to this week. So Harris, Claypool, Juju for me on the Pittsburgh side. And I'll let you kick off the Bengals side. And also, what are you thinking of Claypool or Juju this week? Which one are you on, and which one do you prefer?
I agree. I'm definitely on Claypool more than Juju, just because Juju is likely to get Mike Hilton, who is one of the better slot corners in the NFL. He's fine. Just the fact that he's going to get so much added targets with Johnson. Johnson has 22 already. Take that out, so it's going to be spread around. But I'm with you on Claypool. I think he's going to be one of the most likely people to be in those tournament winning lineups, just with the upside he has and at his ownership. So I really love Claypool as a GPP play this week. Najee is interesting. The Bengals, you spoke about his downside. which is legitimate, but just, I mean, he's played 97% of their snaps so far. And running backs have touched the ball 60 times against the Bengals thus far this year. So on the Bengals side, I really like their offense more than I thought I would, especially since their team total is only at 21. T. Higgins is out. I think Tyler Boyd comes in at a really nice floor play in cash for me. He's in there right now. I'm still evaluating my team. TJ Watt being out really, really hurts Pittsburgh's pass rush. So I think Boyd and Chase can be used in GPPs either as bringbacks to a Pittsburgh stack, or if you want a super low-owned Bengals stack as it is. But Boyd is the guy that I'm really looking at on that side so far. And then another thing real quick is at 2,100, I think you can use the Bengals defense in either format this week. They're quietly 7th in sack rate. They're 9th in QB hit rate. And they're only $100 above the minimum price. So, the problem with that is if you're doing that down there, you're basically saying that with the chalky Titans defense that we talked about, that you need them to not get blown away by that Titans defense, or you're going to have a bit of a problem near the bottom, even though defenses don't totally tell the tale. It looks like the Bengals are coming in at half the Titans ownership at defense right now, so you kind of need them to at least match them along the way. But I think you can do either one of those things, and you can even punt with them in cash.
Yeah, good call there. Yeah, Bengals is somebody that stuck out to me earlier in the week. Just very cheap. I'd prefer the Titans personally, but if I need like the extra 300 in salary, I have no problem going down to the Bengals. You mentioned Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is sitting at 12% ownership, and then this is interesting. Jamar Chase is sitting at 2% ownership. So, I think both of those are in play. And then just to touch on Juju and Claypool, they're both around 2% owned as well, which I love. I'm going to be very high on Claypool, especially this week. So, any thoughts on those ownerships? Seem pretty low, especially for Juju and Claypool. Considering Johnson's out, right? I mean, you take a look at Pittsburgh, and they're a team that typically throws the ball a ton. Ben Roethlisberger threw the ball 40 times last week, so I do expect a lot of usage for Claypool and Juju as well.
Yeah, I think that ownership is reflective of people's just views of Ben Roethlisberger, which are valid, but doesn't matter how bad he looks. If he's throwing the ball 40 times, he's throwing the ball 40 times. And you're right. Pittsburgh is generally a high passing volume team. So at those ownerships, I think he can definitely take shots with those guys. Bring them back with any Bengals, any of those receivers I mentioned, and even Joe Mixon is fine as a bring back on the Bengals side.
Yep, agreed there. I think it is safe to move on. So next game on the slate, we have Baltimore going against Detroit. And this is one that I was very high on earlier in the week, and I think I still am. So Jackson is questionable with an illness. He is expected to play. Hopefully he's coming in here 100%, because I love this matchup for Jackson going against Detroit, one of the worst defenses in the league. And, Jackson kind of scared me week one, not having the best game. And with that said, he still scored 20 points, but he definitely bounced back against Kansas City, scored 37 DraftKings points, and that is something he could typically do week in and week out. He has that rushing yard upside, and something that stuck out to me is we think of Kyler Murray and his rushing yard upside, right? But Kyler Murray this year thus far only has 10 rushing attempts, where Lamar Jackson, he has 28. So that stuck out to me for sure. He can run the ball. Maybe not the best passer in the world, but he can get it done with his legs. And, I don't typically, like stacking Lamar Jackson. I think you can always, play him by himself. But, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown is somebody that's really sticking out to me. He's questionable as well. I do think he's going to play. He did return to practice. But if he does play, 5,600, 16 targets on the year. He's looking good. 26 DraftKings points last week. 19 in week one. Another great matchup here against Detroit. I think this is a smash spot for Baltimore. Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown, and then Tyson Williams is somebody else that To be honest, I don't love the price tag 5,800, and I'll check the ownership in a bit. But you got to expect maybe that does scare some people away, because I do think that's a little bit too expensive, because he is going to be sharing carries. But I do think he is the most talented back in the backfield, and he's getting some usage. 11.3 DraftKings points week 2 against Kansas City, 18 DraftKings points week 1 against the Raiders. He's getting involved in the passing game as well. 6 targets, 5 receptions. So yeah, I like Tyson Williams. I think he's going to be at a phenomenal matchup here, a phenomenal game script in a game they're going to be projected to be leading, which means they should be running the ball. So I like Tyson Williams, but for me, really high on Lamar Jackson this week. What are your thoughts on the Ravens side? Are you as high on Lamar as me, or are you going to be off him this week?
No, I'm 100% with you on this, and on every point really. I would throw in Mark Andrews as well, even though he's been quiet to start. Tunyon and Kittle destroyed Detroit the first 2 games, over 16 yards per target. So they can't stop anybody. Tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. This is total offense with the Ravens. You can do any number of stacks. I think you hit on the best one with Lamar and Brown, and Tyson Williams is fine with me. You mentioned that he's sharing carries, but you also mentioned that he is clearly the most talented, and I think the Ravens coaching staff noticed that in week 2, that Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman are about done. So I think as the season goes along, we'll see the share go a little bit more Tyson Williams' way. He ran half of the snaps after being under 40% in week 1. He had 15 touches, which was also more than week 1, and he was in the game late, which he wasn't in week 1. So I think he's a great GPP play, because I do think people will be on that passing game. On the Detroit side, I'm honestly just as high on them. I think this is a shootout. The Baltimore has nobody left on defense. If you saw, we'll have to wait for the final inactives report, but they're already missing Marcus Peters and Chris Westry, both starting cornerbacks. Jimmy Smith hasn't played this year. They might not have their starting free safety. They've got both defensive tackles, and Justin Houston and Jalen Ferguson are on the COVID list. It might be an entire second team of defense for the Ravens. So, just the way that Detroit has thrown the ball so far, which has surprised me to no end, I think you can stack them. I think you can bring them back, 1 or 2 of them, with that Ravens stack that you talked about. That TJ Hawkinson is my favorite per dollar tight end this week at 5,200. I talked about this all week, that Baltimore has given up by far the most fantasy points per game to tight ends so far this year. Granted, that was Travis Kelsey and Darren Waller. So take it with a bit of a grain of salt, because I think anyone that faced the 2 of them would have given up the most fantasy points per tight end. But Hawkinson is no slouch either, and he's actually running right behind those guys as far as target share and air yard share among tight ends. So you can play him in any format. Deandre Swift has 16 targets thus far this year out of the backfield. He's still doubling Jamal Williams' snap share, even though they're calling them the 1A and 1B still. Baltimore's defense looks good against the run, so I think that's going to eliminate Jamal Williams as between the tackles running and open up Swift's in space, like pass catching and everything. And then, Quintez Cephas is not a name that I like to throw out there, but he's still leading. He's run over almost 90% of snaps for Detroit. He's leading them in routes run. He's leading them in targets, taking Hawkinson and Swift out of that, leading the wide receivers that way. With that secondary as banged up he's under 4,000. I think he can be played in these stacks as well. So high on the Lions, something I didn't think I'd say this year.
Yeah, something I didn't think you'd say as well, but yeah, I get it for sure. I'm very high on Hawkinson this week. It's between him or Kelsey. If I'm able to go up and get Kelsey, it's going to be him. If I'm not, it's going to be Hawkinson here, 5,200, like you mentioned. The Ravens defense is very beat up and have not been looking good, and they've been really using Hawkinson. 20 targets on the year. He's been looking phenomenal. I do expect that to continue here. Baltimore has given up the most points to opposing tight ends thus far this year, and yeah, I think think Hawkinson is in an absolute smash spot. The Lions are going to have to keep up with this Ravens offense. You mentioned Cephas, who is very cheap, 3,900. I like him as well. But yeah, it should be a very, very interesting game to target for sure. Anything else sticking out to you? For me, it's going to be Lamar Jackson stacks with Brown. I like running it back with Cephas or Hawkinson, and maybe even both. But anything else sticking out to you?
Nope, I have that exact stack. I actually have two versions. One with Cephas and Hawkinson double run back, and one with Swift and Hawkinson double run back. So we're on the same page in this game.
Sounds good. I say we can move on now to the Saints versus the Patriots. Yeah, not much sticking out on this one for me. Anything sticking out to you on this one?
No, and I talked about this on the Football Diehards show on Sirius NFL Radio last night with Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey, that this game is pretty much a fade for me. I mean, you can never fully fade Alvin Kamara. If he's on your season-long teams, you're playing him. And he's never going to be like a total fade just because of who he is. But, when you consider this is one of the lowest team totals, or the lowest game totals on the slate, Jameis Winston is still, poor decision-making Jameis Winston. That kind of thing against New England's defense is a dangerous thing. And Kamara is their only playmaker, and Bill Belichick is known for taking out a team's only playmaker, which I think he's going to do this week. Saints team totals under 20. Certainly not interested in any of the wide receivers. And then on the other side, it's really kind of the same idea. The Saints defense is kind of set up to stop what is really kind of a safe, slow ball control New England offense. I could see this game being like 14-13. So I'm not having any part of it.
Yeah, I just can't see. I honestly can't see one play in this game that sticks out. I mean, like Damian Harris, if anything, he's been looking very good this year. Very impressed with him. He is cheap, 5,600, if anything. But other than that, like just nothing at all sticks out to me on this game. I mean, Patriots. If you want to talk defense, Patriots defense. But they're 4,100, right? So I'm finding myself more so paying down for the Bengals or the Titans. So yeah, nothing really sticks out to me on this one. Should we move on, or do you want to talk about anything else on this one?
No, just to add on to what you said there, I do think that if you are in that defense range, if you're playing in the large field GPPs, I think the Patriots is a great call because the majority of people are in that range are going to find that extra 200 to get up to Denver at home against the Jets. So, defense is so high variant that you could easily get some leverage with the New England defense over Denver's defense in that form of tournament.
I like it. We'll move on. Hopefully there's something more to talk about on this game, and I think it will be. So we have the Cardinals going against the Jaguars here. I'll start this one off, and yeah, I think it's safe to say I think Kyler Murray's in a phenomenal spot here against Jacksonville. Really good matchup, and Kyler Murray has been looking phenomenal. The only thing I'll say, though, that stuck out to me is, typically I like Kyler Murray for that rushing yard upside, right? But only 5 rushing attempts in week 2, 5 in week 1 as well. I hope that does bump up, but he doesn't really need it, right? 36 passing attempts, 29 completions in week 2, 38.1 DraftKings points, 34.56 DraftKings points in week 1, averaging 36.3. He's been looking phenomenal against Minnesota, did very well against Tennessee, very well. Both of those very good matchups. And then he gets another very good matchup here against Jacksonville. So yeah, I think Murray's in a phenomenal spot. Did not get there in cash for Murray, but I think he is cash viable. Do have quite a bit of him in tournaments as well. I guess one thing to note is going to be DeAndre Hopkins is going to attempt to play through his rib injury. I don't really like hearing that, to be honest. Maybe he's going to be limited, and I don't like that. And, I like Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore's 5,000. Believe it or not, he actually leads Arizona in targets, 13 targets on the year. Hopkins does have 12. So I think Rondale Moore is somebody that I do like. Kirk If Hopkins is beat up, Kirk could be something to look at for sure at a cheap price. And then on the flip side for Jacksonville, I love Marvin Jones Jr. as a run back option in a very high scoring game. They're going to be trailing. They're going to be trying to catch up. They're going to be passing the ball. Marvin Jones is getting used quite a bit, 20 targets throughout 2 weeks, averaging 18.1 DraftKings points. Marvin Jones is the most talented wide receiver, in my opinion, on the Jaguars. He's the most used wide receiver on the Jaguars as well. So kind of how I'm looking at it is going to be Kyler Murray stacks with Rondale Moore, maybe Kirk. I don't know if I want to get to Hopkins, to be honest, with the injury questions, and then running it back with Marvin Jones. What are you looking at for this game?
You pretty much hit on everything there. I'm with you on every point you made there. Hopkins' injury is the big question mark. I guess we'll have to see exactly what they say because in this game I was all week, and I even said it last night. I've been Murray Hopkins, thinking that everyone was going to be on Rondale Moore, and I was one of the biggest preseason Rondale Moore fans coming into this year. You're right. He leads in targets, catches, and receiving yards. He did only run 43% of snaps last week, even with that breakout game, which was behind Kirk and AJ Green and Hopkins, obviously. But if Hopkins is limited, it's tough to think that Moore isn't going to get more run there. You mentioned Kirk. I think Kirk is the sneaky play here, especially after busting. If you want to go off of Moore's ownership, which is surely going to be higher. I'm just looking at the list right now. He's coming in at about 6.4%, which is half of Hopkins' ownership, but way more than the other guys. Kirk is coming in at 2.8%. So I do think he's pretty sneaky. But you built the way to do this. I think Kyler with his receivers brought back by Marvin Jones. I don't think you need to get any cuter than that because that's going to get you your leverage enough.
Yep, for sure. Any interest in the run game? James Robinson has been somebody that has really disappointed me. Hasn't really been doing anything at all. They're not using him as much as I'd like to see. Did have 3 targets last week, 6 targets week 1, so they are involving him in the passing game. It's just, I don't know. He has 5,700. Any interest in James Robinson or any interest in Chase Edmonds for Arizona?
Edmonds, yes. He's definitely running running way more snaps than James Conner. He still only has 5 more touches. So it doesn't look like he's going to ever be the bell cow back for that team because they just don't need to use him that way. I think he's a solid GPP play because his price really isn't moving that much. And Jacksonville is totally beatable on the ground. So Chase Edmonds, sure, you can use him in any kind of format. I wouldn't do it in cash, any kind of a single entry or multi-entry GPP though. He's fine. He's got the upside there. Not interested in James Robinson yet. The week 2 snap and touch share was more encouraging his way between him and Carlos Hyde after they pretty much split in week 1 and neither did anything. But I just can't trust his usage yet with Urban Meyer as the coach. So no interest in the Jacksonville running game for me.
Sadly, same. I wish they would use Robinson more. I think the talent's there.
I drafted him so much.
Same. It sucks, but hopefully they get it going, get it together, and get him the ball. Right? I mean, the talent's there. Use them. You mentioned Chase Edmonds ownership coming in at about 7%. I think we can move on, but yeah, I think the Arizona side is very intriguing to me in that game. Yeah, I wonder what sticks out to you on this one. So very interesting game here. Obviously, we have the Denver Broncos going against the Jets here. And yeah, we could talk about the Broncos defense, but outside of the Broncos defense, who is in a smash spot, very expensive, but in a smash spot nonetheless, is anybody sticking out to you? First of all, I'm curious on the Jets side, and then also on the Denver side as well.
Certainly nobody on the Jets side. Their team total is 14. The Broncos, the Broncos have allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing running backs and the 3rd fewest to opposing wide receivers. Zach Wilson has been a nightmare so far. Their Mekhi Becton is out, their top left tackle. The Jets are allowing the 2nd highest sack rate and the 5th highest quarterback hit rate. So, the Denver defense is expensive, but fire them up all you want against that team. I did mention, I do like the Patriots as a pivot off of them in the GPP format. As far as the Denver offense, I think you can use either running back in GPP, Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams. I prefer Williams, who's still under $5,000. They're favored by 14 in this game, so that's a really friendly game script for running backs. And the Jets have allowed a lot of points to running backs so far. And then I'm curious of your thought on Cortland Sutton. He was dominant against Jacksonville. 35% target share. He led the NFL in air yards in week 2. I think you can definitely use him in any format. I'm just a little concerned that they don't need to pass to him so much this week. So where are you on Sutton? And any Jets for you?
No Jets for me. But yeah, Sutton, I'm kind of disappointed in myself because last week I was looking through the slate, first look, I was like, oh, I'm going to play Cortland Sutton this week. I'm going to be all over him. And then I completely forget about him as the week goes on. He goes out there and scores 27.9 DraftKings points against Jacksonville. They have since priced him up $800 to $6K. And yeah, I definitely still think he's in play, but that just kind of disappointed myself there because I was all over him until it finally became time to make lineups. Noah Fant is somebody who I went to last week on the Denver side. I don't hate going back to as well. 6 targets, 4 receptions, had a touchdown as well. I think he's fine. Fant, Sutton for me on the Broncos. Nothing on the Jets. Broncos defense, like you mentioned, they're going to be the highest owned in tournaments. If you can go up there, if you have the salary, get them. For me, I don't really typically pay up for defense. I'm typically paying down, so probably won't get there all that much, but I can't not say that they're not a phenomenal play. I think they are. But yeah, to be honest, not much interest in this game. But if anything, if I was to play anything, it would be Sutton and Fant.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's an argument to really say not to.
Yep, so we will move on to the next game. We have the Dolphins going against the Raiders. Anything sticking out to you on this one?
Well, I mean, you can use Waller, just because he's Waller. Again, there's the mid-tier tight ends like Hawkinson and Pitts and Gronkowski, who we haven't talked about yet. I think are better just from a game construction perspective. But, Waller has 26 targets through 2 weeks. He's obviously the guy there. One thing to note about Miami is they've given up 10 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown to tight ends so far, and that's the Patriots and Bills tight ends, who are nothing to write home about. This is a legit elite tight end one. He went over 100 yards against Miami last year. So obviously I think you can play him. Kenyon Drake is also playable in this game, which I didn't think I was going to say, but he, kind of like the Baltimore running backs we talked about. I think they noticed right away that Kenyon Drake is still somewhat good and Peyton Barber is disgusting. And he also had 6 targets against Pittsburgh. So I'm good with playing Kenyon Drake in GPPs in this game for sure, especially with the Raiders favored. And then you can correlate him with the defense as well against Jacoby Brissett, who is starting for Miami for the next 3 games, it looks like, or more.
Yep, good points there. Yeah, like you said, Waller is always in play. For me, not going to get to him much at all this week. I like Hawkinson more. I like Kelsey more, which Kelsey, Hawkinson, and Waller are actually the 3 highest projected owned. We have Kelsey number 1, Hawkinson number 2, and then Waller number 3. And we'll talk about some other tight ends and Gronk coming up here as well. Yeah, for me, not much interest in this game, to be honest. Like you said, Drake's fine, but outside of that, I'm more interested in these next 2 games. So I say we move on to the next 2, starting with the Buccaneers going against the Rams. Now, this is a game where I have a ton of interest in, so I'll let you kick this one off. What are you looking for here?
Yeah, this is probably the game I have the most exposure to, even over the Chargers and Chiefs. Just simply because there's significant priorities in this game from a pricing standpoint. I'll talk about the cash side if you want to, jump in on GPP too. Cooper Kupp to me is a cash lock on the Rams side, just because of what he's been so far. He's currently the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. The Bucs slot coverage is terrible to begin with, and now is injury riddled as well. So he should destroy them this week. He is running 99% of snaps convincingly as the Rams wide receiver 1. So he is the first guy I'm clicking in cash. The second guy I'm clicking in cash is on the other side of the ball, who I cannot understand why Chris Godwin is $6,100. I think that's a total misprice, especially now with Antonio Brown out. Obviously, that news wasn't there when they priced him, but even if he was, Godwin leads the Bucs in targets, catches, yards. He's going out of the slot in this one, so he's the likeliest one to avoid Jalen Ramsey of the rest of their passing attack. So, I mean, in cash, I don't see fading either of those receivers, and especially at their prices. Neither one should be under 7,000, and both are. So that's kind of the one I'm clicking to right off the bat in cash. GPP, there's a wider range of things you can do with that. So I'll let you kind of go and see which way you're going with that.
Yeah, for tournaments, I found myself, having some stacks with on the Saffron side, on the Rams side. I really like Cooper Kupp, as does everybody. He's going to be the projected owned number 1 wide receiver, 23.67%. The next highest owned is 19%. So you take a look at it, the 3 highest owned wide receivers on the slate: Kupp, Godwin, and Woods, all in the same game. And how can we blame you? Like, also cheap, right? Like, even Cooper Kupp, 6,800, he's way too cheap. You have Woods. I don't get this price tag, 5,700. He's too cheap. And then Chris Godwin, 6,100. He's too cheap. Mike Evans is too cheap. All these guys are way too cheap. And this is a game that I'm very, very invested in, very, very high in. And like I was talking about, like GPPs, tournaments, I'm looking at stacking up Stafford. Stafford's been looking phenomenal, averaging 22.8 DraftKings points. He's very cheap, 6,400. And, the Buccaneers' passing defense has just not been that great. Their run defense is fantastic, but the passing defense is just not there. You mentioned the injuries as well. So I'm going with Stafford, and I'm stacking him up. I think double stacks, single stacks, Kupp, Woods. Woods is way too cheap as well, excuse me, like I mentioned. And then running it back with like a Godwin, I think that's a phenomenal spot. And we didn't touch on him, but Rob Gronkowski is somebody that I keep not playing, but he keeps scoring touchdowns, like 4 touchdowns on the year. This looks like prime Gronk. So maybe he keeps going. Do you have any interest in going back to the well with Gronk, or you're going to be off him this week? For me, I like Hawkinson more. I like Kelsey more, but it's hard to deny that Gronk just keeps getting it done.
Yeah, and in GPPs, I think he needs to be included in your Buccaneers stacks. Or even as a bring back to those Ram stacks he talked about. In cash, I agree with you. In general, I like Hawkinson much better. I like Kyle Pitts better this week, and then like you said, paying up for Kelsey obviously too. But yeah, you can't ignore him. The other thing to talk about with him is, when they had all those tight ends last year, his snap share just wasn't good enough to trust every week. And this year it is. Like, he's all of a sudden he's back to just being the clear-cut tight end 1 there. Like, they're not using OJ Howard and Cameron Brate. It's all him. So yeah, he's safe to play. I like I said, I like the other guys better for cash, but I mean, if you tell me that you think Gronk is going to outscore Hawkinson this week, I disagree, but I won't argue it either. And then one more thing on the Bucs side, on the Rams side, Jason Pierre-Paul is out for Tampa, so that improves that Rams offense even more. So go for it, smash them.
Yep, definitely will have a ton of ownership in this game. So hopefully it does deliver. And then we have one final game we'll talk about, and it's another game that does draw some interest for me. See if you do feel the same way. We have Seattle going against Minnesota. Lots in this game. What's sticking out to you the most?
Yeah, this is a great one. This This is the second highest over under right now, and it's just behind the Chiefs Chargers. I'm looking right now is sitting at 57. My God, and this one is 56. So it's ahead of the Bucks Rams by a point, behind Chiefs Chargers by a point, and I feel like it's not getting the attention that those are. So this looks like a really solid attack spot in tournaments. Also, the way a lot of these players are priced, I think the reason you're finding the ownership so much lower is because the ones that we're paying the most attention to are in that same price range. Like, Russell Wilson is coming in at less ownership than Lamar Jackson here, and I think that makes him like the logical pivot off of that if you're in that price range. So, I mean, against Minnesota's defense, Minnesota once again is injured on their defense, which is what was the problem for them last year, why they were so bad. Lockett and Metcalf are dominating the passing snaps for Seattle. I think double stacking them is fine. They were annoying with that last year. I think Metcalf is going to get Patrick Peterson in this game like Hopkins did last week. I'm almost sure of it, but Metcalf has the size on him, so I'm not afraid to play him at all. Lockett is once again fantastic to start the year. He has got 3 touchdowns already, and he's second in the league in receiving yards. So, I mean, go for it with that Seattle passing game. Where are you on them? Where are you on Carson? And talk to me about Minnesota.
Yeah, so Carson, at the beginning of the week, I was like, I don't think I'll go there. But as the week goes on, I was thinking, yeah, maybe I should, right? It's a high-scoring game, one of the highest totals on the slate. And, I guess what concerned me last week is he only averaged 2.4 yards per carry. And if he did not score those 2 touchdowns, he would have only had 3.1 DraftKings points. But, I think there is a good chance that he does, score a touchdown here. So 6,400 is good. He has 3 targets on the year as well. And he's cheap, 6,400 in a game like this. Against Minnesota, I think he's fine. I ended up starting to go more Carson as the week does go on. So yeah, I think he's fine. You mentioned the Seattle Seahawks side. Russell Wilson, I like it. Lockett, I like it. Metcalf. Metcalf is now $100 cheaper than Lockett, and it seems like every week 1 and week 2, I've been playing Metcalf, hoping he's going to be that guy, and it's been Lockett each time. I'm hoping, maybe it's Lockett this, or maybe it's Metcalf this time. I'm going right back to Metcalf. Don't have the ownerships up, but depending on the ownership, that would sway me one way or another trying to pull it up. Yeah, Lockett is 12% owned. Oh, they're the exact
identical.
same pretty much.
Yeah,
that's okay. So that doesn't help me out at all, right? But yeah, I think I might just kind of mix and match both of them. Both of them been looking phenomenal. Both are in a phenomenal matchup here. That's pretty funny. Both the same ownership. And then on the Minnesota side, I mean, Dalvin Cook was somebody that I was going to be very high on. I was going to have him in cash. I was going to have him in tournaments. He was going to be my highest owned running back, but he's battling an injury. He might not play. And if he does play, he's going to be extremely limited. It's saying he appears unlikely to play this game. So if he does not play, then that gives me a ton of interest in Madison. Seahawks have given up the most DraftKings points to opposing running backs. Madison is going to be 6,000. I think Madison becomes a decent play there at 6K if Cook is indeed out, and it is looking like it's trending that way. I think Thielen's fine as always. Jefferson, they're always in play, but a guy I do like is KJ Osborne. Was on him last week. He did perform well, and he's getting usage, and he's still very cheap. I think his price should be bumped up a lot more considering the target usage he's getting. 15 targets in 2 weeks. You have a great matchup here against Seattle. He's averaging 17.4 DraftKings points. I think Osborne is a cheap guy that I'm really gravitating towards this week. So kind of your thoughts on the whole Cook situation. If Cook plays, if Cook does not play, are you going to go to Madison, or are you just going to completely stay away from the backfield?
Yeah, it's on DraftKings. It's hard because DraftKings actually did quite a good job at anticipating this and priced him up to 6,000 right off the bat. If he was cheaper, he'd be the play for everybody. So I'm going to tinker a little bit again after we're done. He is absolutely one of the top plays in cash if Cook sits altogether. Problem is, it's a late game, So you need to make sure, if you are going to build around Madison, that you put him in your flex spot and you have a viable pivot for him. If you can't find that based on your lineup construction, just leave it alone. On FanDuel, you have to take the risk on him for our FanDuel players. He's 5,200 over there, which he basically needs to be in 100% of your lineups, cash or GPP at that play. But again, the same thing. It's a little bit difficult because Cook isn't out yet. They did elevate Amir Abdullah from their practice squad to the active roster, which indicates Cook shouldn't play. But until we get word of that, you need to have that flexibility. So put him in the flex and just make sure you have someone you're at least relatively comfortable pivoting to if Cook does surprise and gets in there, because we have seen stuff like that before.
Yep, I think that's a a great point there. Put him in your flex spot. I think there are potentially some options you could look at as well, but if not, probably leave it alone. I think he's in a good spot though. If Cook does not play, I really do think he's a good spot against the Seattle defense. But I'll have to monitor that. But yeah, I do like the point you brought up about putting him in the flex just in case. I think that's big. Anything else on this game?
Nope, I agree with you on KJ Osborne. He shouldn't be as cheap as he is. They're running 3 wide receiver sets all the time now with since Irv Smith got hurt. So, he's still the wide receiver 3, obviously, to Jefferson and Thielen, but the target share and the snap share there is more than enough that he shouldn't be priced at $3,500. So he can be played in any format.
Yep, I like it. Going to be on him again once again this week. But that's about it. So, any final thoughts on the slate for you?
No, lot of fun ones today. I think we got more of those low 50s to mid 50s games than we've had so far this week. So we shouldn't see any one game dominate. Kind of like we saw with Chargers Cowboys last week, which busted. So it should be a fun one.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of things have opened up throughout the week with all these injuries as well. So I thought we brought up a lot of good things that did stick out with some guys being out. So yeah, guys, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back on Wednesday. Check us out Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then we'll be back again next Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning as well. Good luck, and let's make some money on this Week 3 Sunday.